The beam of my flashlight catches the dust, floating like tiny galaxies in the cramped attic space. For weeks now, I've been putting this off. After Gran passed, the responsibility to clear out the old Victorian house fell to me. My cousins were too busy with their own lives. My parents were too elderly to manage the stairs, and my sister. Well, Sarah hasn't been back to Blackwood in 15 years. Not since the accident. Across forgotten furniture draped in yellowed sheets, I sweep the light. There are boxes of Christmas decorations we haven't used since I was a child and stacks of moldering magazines. The air is thick with the scent of old paper and something else. Something faintly metallic that reminds me of pennies left too long in a pocket. Just get it over with, Daniel, I mutter to myself, my voice sounding strange in the silence. Box it up, donate what you can, and be done with it. The estate agent is coming next week. Now that Blackwood has become a trendy weekend retreat for city folk, the old house is worth a fortune. The money will help with Mom's medical bills, so there's no point in sentimentality. Still, I can't help but feel a pang of regret. For generations, this house has been in the Montgomery family. In the far corner, the beam of my flashlight catches on something, a trunk I don't recognize. It's made of dark wood with brass fittings, the kind you might see in an old pirate movie. Curious, I make my way towards it, careful not to bump my head on the sloping ceiling. The trunk has no lock, just a simple latch. I blow off a layer of dust and lift the lid. Inside are stacks of letters tied with faded ribbon and several leather-bound journals. On top sits a black and white photograph in an ornate silver frame. I pick it up, angling it towards the light. It's a formal portrait of a man in his 30s dressed in the fashion of the 1940s. His eyes are light, probably blue, and there's something familiar about the set of his jaw. With a jolt, I realize it's my grandfather, Edward Montgomery. I've seen photos of him before, of course, but this one is different. In his expression is an intensity that I've never noticed in the family albums downstairs. I set the photograph aside and pick up one of the bundles of letters. The paper is thin and fragile, and the handwriting is an elegant cursive that's becoming a lost art. The first letter is dated September 3, 1943. My dearest Edward, I hope this letter finds you well. The weather here in London has turned cold earlier than usual, and the blackouts make the evenings seem endless. The sirens sounded twice last night, but thankfully no bombs fell near us. I think of you constantly and pray for your safe return. Dr. Chambers assures me that your work is of vital importance to the war effort. Though I confess I still don't understand why they would send a historian to the front lines. There must be more to your assignment than you've been permitted to tell me. The children ask for you every night. I've shown them your last letter, but Eliza is still too young to understand why her father can't come home. Thomas tries to be brave, but I've caught him crying when he thinks no one is watching. Please write when you can. Even a few lines would bring me comfort. All my love, Margaret. I frown, setting the letter down. This doesn't make sense. My grandfather wasn't a historian. He was an insurance salesman who never left Blackwood. And my grandmother's name wasn't Margaret. It was Helen. They had one child, my father James, not two named Thomas and Eliza. I pick up another letter from a different bundle. Edward, your last communication was most disturbing. I understand your reluctance, but you must persist. The artifact's importance cannot be overstated. If the Germans acquire it before we do, the consequences would be catastrophic. Your cover remains intact. Your wife believes you are documenting historical sites and military intelligence has corroborated your story. Remember your oath, Montgomery. The order has existed for centuries for this very purpose. The coordinates you requested are enclosed. Proceed with extreme caution. Our agent in Berlin reports increased occult activity in the region. They know what we seek. Destroy this letter after reading. Faithfully. See, I stare at the letter. A chill runs down my spine despite the attic stuffiness. This has to be some kind of joke or fiction. My grandfather selling insurance in Blackwood doesn't exactly align with secret missions during World War II. Yet the letters feel authentic. The paper aged naturally. The ink faded in places where fingers would have held it. And in the trunk along with the journals, there are dozens more bundles. I grab one of the leather-bound books and open it to a random page. Asterisk March 15, 1944. We found it today. God help us. We found it. After months of searching, following folklore and rumors through bombed-out villages and ancient forests, we have the Schwartz device in our possession. It's smaller than I expected, no larger than a pocket watch, but there's no mistaking its otherworldly origin, asterisk. The symbols etched into its surface match exactly those in the Voynich manuscript. Roberts touched it with his bare hand before I could stop him. He began screaming almost immediately, his skin blistering as though burned. But there was no heat, only a cold so intense it frosted the hair on my arms from 2 feet away. Roberts died within minutes, still clutching the device, his features contorted in a rictus of agony. Using tongs and the lead-lined box provided by C, we secured the device. Even now, I can feel it pulsing in my pack like a heartbeat in a rhythm slightly off from my own. I must get it back to London, though I fear what they intend to do with it. Something this powerful should not exist in our world. I close the journal, my hands trembling slightly. This is insane. My grandfather was a quiet, ordinary man who died of a heart attack when I was 10. I have vague memories of him teaching me to fish at the lake, of the smell of his pipe tobacco, of him dozing in his armchair while baseball played on the radio. He wasn't some secret agent hunting supernatural artifacts during the war. Yet, I can't deny the authenticity of these materials. The trunk itself looks like it's been here for decades, undisturbed until now. I glance at my watch. It's nearly midnight. I've been in the attic for hours without realizing it. Mom will be wondering where I am. I promised to call her after I finished at Gran's house. I should pack all this up and look at it properly in the morning, but curiosity gnaws at me. One more letter, I decide. Just one more. I select a letter from a bundle tied with black ribbon rather than the faded blue of the others. Edward, they're lying to you. The Order has no intention of destroying the device. I've seen the plans. They mean to harness its power to open the doorway permanently. You must not deliver it to London. The risk is too great. There's a safe house in Geneva. I've enclosed the address. Meet me there on the 30th and bring the device. We'll find a way to neutralize it together. Trust no one else. M. This letter isn't signed with a full name, just the initial M. Could it be from Margaret, the woman who claimed to be my grandfather's wife? I reach for another journal, flipping through until a passage catches my eye. April 2, 1944. I've made a terrible mistake. I trusted M when I should have listened to C. The safe house was a trap. The men waiting there weren't part of our order, but something else. Something worse. They spoke German, yes, but with an accent I couldn't place. Their eyes. I escaped with the device, but not before using it. God forgive me, but I had no choice. They had me cornered, and their intentions were clear. I remembered Robert's death and took a calculated risk. I removed the device from its box and activated the central dial. What happened next defies explanation. The men, if they were men at all, began to fold in on themselves, as though reality itself rejected their presence. Their screams still echo in my ears, but not because of their volume. The sound seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere, vibrating in my bones rather than traveling through the air. I replaced the device in its box before it could affect me. But I fear the exposure, brief as it was, has changed me. My reflection looks wrong somehow. The eyes that stare back at me in the mirror don't feel like my own. I'm not returning to London. The device is too dangerous for anyone to possess. I've decided to disappear, to create a new life, far from the war, far from the order, far from anyone who might know about the Schwartz device. It will stay with me, hidden where no one will ever find it. This will be my last entry. Edward Montgomery, historian and agent of the order, dies today. I closed the journal slowly, my mind racing. If I'm to believe these writings, my grandfather wasn't who my family thought he was. He was someone who assumed a new identity after the war, bringing with him some kind of dangerous artifact. But that's impossible. People can't just create new lives out of thin air. Especially not in a small town like Blackwood, where everybody knows everybody's business. Yet doubt creeps in. I realize I know very little about my grandfather's early life. He rarely spoke about his past. And when he did, the stories were vague, lacking specific details. I always attributed this to the typical reticence of men of his generation, especially those who lived through the war. I look back at the trunk. There's more here. Much more. Letters I haven't read. Journals filled with entries that might explain everything, but a niggling fear stops me from continuing tonight. What if it's true? What if my entire family history is built on a lie? And what happened to the woman named Margaret and her children, Thomas and Eliza? I carefully return everything to the trunk, close the lid, and make my way back downstairs. The old Victorian feels different now. Its familiar creaks and groans taking on a sinister quality I've never noticed before. In the kitchen, I pour myself a generous whiskey from Gran's liquor cabinet and call my mother. Daniel, is everything all right? It's after midnight. Her voice is thick with sleep. Sorry, Mom. I lost track of time at Gran's house. Listen, I have a question. Did Grandpa Edward have any family before he met Gran? There's a pause longer than it should be. Why do you ask? Just curious. I found some old photos in the attic. Another pause. Your grandfather didn't like to talk about his past. I know his parents died when he was young and he was raised by an aunt somewhere in New England. That's all your father ever told me. Did Dad ever mention someone named Margaret or children called Thomas and Eliza? The silence that follows is so long, I wonder if the call has dropped. Then my mother speaks, her voice different, somehow harder. Where did you hear those names? Like I said, I found some old, listen to me very carefully, Daniel. Put everything back exactly where you found it. Lock up the house and come straight home. Don't tell anyone what you found and don't look through anything else. Do you understand? Mom, what's going on? Do you know something about this? Just do as I say, please. It's important. The line goes dead. I stare at my phone, bewildered. My mother has never spoken to me that way before. She's always been the calm one, the rational one. The fact that those names provoked such a reaction only confirms that there's something to the letters, something my family has been keeping secret. Despite my mother's warning, I can't leave it alone. I finish my whiskey and head back to the attic. The trunk seems to be waiting for me like a patient predator. This time I'm more methodical. I remove all the contents, arranging them chronologically based on dates. The letters span from 1942 to 1945. And the journals cover an even longer period from 1938 to 1944. I start at the beginning with the earliest journal, January 12, 1938. Today I was inducted into the Order of the Eternal Watch. The ceremony was held in the underground chamber beneath Oxford's Bodleian Library, a place few know exists. 7 senior members stood in a circle around the ancient stone table, their faces obscured by hoods, despite the fact that we all know each other as colleagues and academics. The oath I took binds me to secrecy. But this journal will be kept in code and hidden where only another member of the order might find it, should something happen to me. Professor Blackwood assures me that my expertise in medieval symbology is exactly what they need, especially with the growing threat from Germany. The Thule Society's influence over Hitler grows by the day, and there are rumors they seek artifacts similar to those the Order has protected for centuries. I still find it difficult to believe that such things exist, objects of power that defy scientific explanation. Yet the demonstration I witnessed during the induction leaves no room for doubt. The small stone they call the philosopher's ember turned water to wine before my eyes with no trickery or sleight of hand. My academic career has been devoted to rationality and evidence. Yet now I find myself in a world where magic, for lack of a better term, is real. It both terrifies and exhilarates me. I pause in my reading. Professor Blackwood. The town of Blackwood is named after one of the founding families, but I've never heard of a Professor Blackwood associated with my grandfather. I continue reading through the journals, which detail my grandfather's, or whoever Edward Montgomery really was, induction into this Order of the Eternal Watch, and his early work translating ancient texts and cataloging artifacts of supposed supernatural origin. The entries become more disturbing as they approach the war years. Edward describes cult rituals performed by Nazi officials, artifacts that could control minds or open doorways to other dimensions, and a race between the Order and the Thule Society to secure these objects before they could be weaponized. By 1942, Edward had been sent to Europe under the cover of documenting historical sites at risk from bombing, but his real mission was to track down and secure artifacts before the Germans could find them. The letters from Margaret, who I now understand was his real wife, become increasingly desperate as the war progresses. She knows something is wrong, that her husband isn't telling her everything. The children grow older without their father. Thomas has behavioral problems at school. Eliza has nightmares about a shadow man who whispers to her at night. The letters from C, who I deduce is Professor Calloway, mentioned in the journals as a senior member of the Order, become more urgent and less concerned with Edward's safety as the hunt for the Schwartz device intensifies. And then there are the occasional letters signed only, M. These are different, warnings about the Order's true intentions, pleas for Edward to question his mission, to consider that he might be on the wrong side. The final journal entries detail Edward's disillusionment with the Order, his growing suspicion that they mean to use the artifacts rather than protect them, and his fateful decision to flee with the Schwartz device. The last entry I've already read, his decision to disappear and create a new life. But there's one final letter in the trunk, dated October 10, 1945, months after the war ended. It's addressed simply to E and has no return address. E, I found you. It wasn't difficult. You were never trained in deception as I was. Don't be alarmed. I have no intention of revealing your location to the Order or to Margaret. Your secret is safe with me, as I hope mine will be with you. You were right to take the device and run. The Order has changed. The war corrupted them, as power always corrupts. They've split into factions, each with their own agenda for the artifacts. Some wish to destroy them, others to use them, and still others to worship them. Civil war looms within our ranks. I write to warn you that you are not as safe as you believe. The device leaves a trace, a quantum signature that those with the right tools can detect. They will find you eventually unless you take precautions. Enclosed is a schema for a containment box that will mask the signature. I've also included instructions for a ritual. Yes, a ritual, despite your scientific misgivings, that will bind the device to your bloodline. This will prevent anyone else from using it, even if they manage to steal it. There is a price, of course. There always is with objects of power. The binding will link your fate and the fate of your descendants to the device. As long as it remains contained, you will prosper. Should it ever be activated again? I leave that decision to you. You have a new wife now. I understand. Helen seems like a good woman. The child she carries will be born into a burden he cannot comprehend. Consider carefully before you proceed. I won't contact you again unless absolutely necessary. Live well, old friend. Create the quiet life you sought. Just remember that some shadows can never be truly escaped. M. Enclosed with the letter is a technical drawing of a box with multiple layers of different metals and strange symbols carved into the inner surfaces. The ritual instructions are written in Latin with English translations in the margins. I sit back, overwhelmed by what I've learned. If these documents are to be believed, and despite the fantastical elements, I'm finding it harder to doubt their authenticity, then my grandfather was not the man I thought he was. He was Edward Montgomery, but not the Edward Montgomery who was born in Blackwood and lived a quiet, unremarkable life. He was someone who stole that identity, who abandoned his real family and created a new one. My family, which means my father wasn't really his son, and I'm not really a Montgomery. But what about the device? The Schwartz device that caused a man named Roberts to die in agony, that made enemy agents fold in on themselves like reality itself rejected them? Did my grandfather bring it to Blackwood? Did he perform the ritual to bind it to our bloodline? And if he did, where is it now? A creaking floorboard startles me from my thoughts. I whirl around, but there's no one there. Just the settling of the old house. Still, an uneasiness settles over me. I check my watch again. It's nearly 4 o'clock in the morning. I've been reading for hours, and exhaustion suddenly hits me like a physical blow. I carefully return everything to the trunk, making sure to place the items exactly as I found them. Despite my fatigue, I carry the trunk downstairs to my car. My mother's warning echoes in my mind. But I can't leave this here. I need to understand what it means for my family. As I drive home through the pre-dawn darkness, my headlights cutting through a light fog that's rolled in from the lake. I can't shake the feeling that I'm being watched. Twice I check my rearview mirror, convinced there's a car following me, but the road behind me is empty. When I arrive at my apartment building, I struggle with the weight of the trunk. It seems heavier now, as though the contents have gained mass simply by being read. Inside my apartment, I push aside the coffee table and place the trunk in the center of my living room. I should sleep. I know I should sleep, but one question keeps nagging at me. If my grandfather performed the ritual to bind the Schwartz device to our bloodline, where did he hide it? On a hunch, I examine the trunk more carefully. The craftsmanship is exquisite with dovetail joints and brass fittings that have developed a beautiful patina with age. But something about the dimensions bothers me. The inside seems slightly smaller than the outside would suggest. I run my hands along the bottom, pressing gently until I feel a slight give in one corner. With more pressure, a hidden panel slides open, revealing a concealed compartment. Inside is a box that matches exactly the schema in the letter from M. It's made of layered metals, lead, copper, and something silvery that might be platinum, with strange symbols etched into its surface. It's about the size of a cigar box, heavy for its dimensions. My heart races as I lift it out. There's no lock, just a simple metal clasp. Despite every instinct screaming at me to leave it closed, I find my fingers moving to open it. The clasp is stiff, as though it hasn't been opened in decades. It finally gives way with a soft click that sounds unnaturally loud in my quiet apartment. Inside, nestled in dark velvet, is an object unlike anything I've ever seen. At first glance, it resembles an antique pocket watch, round and slightly flattened, about 3 inches in diameter. But the material isn't metal. It's something that seems to shift between solid and liquid, its surface rippling slightly like the skin of a soap bubble, reflecting colors that don't quite exist in nature. Symbols are etched into its surface, the same symbols from the box and from the pages of my grandfather's journal. In the center is a small dial that seems to float just above the surface without actually touching it. I don't touch it. I remember what happened to Roberts when he made that mistake. Instead, I stare at it, mesmerized by its impossible physics, by the way it seems to pulse with a rhythm that's almost but not quite synchronized with my heartbeat. This is it. The Schwartz device. The artifact my grandfather stole from his mission. The object so powerful that multiple factions were willing to kill for it during the war. And apparently, it's been bound to my family's bloodline for generations. I carefully close the box, not quite believing what I've discovered. My grandfather, or the man who became my grandfather, was involved in something far beyond ordinary espionage during the war. He was part of a secret order that dealt with objects of power, with things that should not exist according to the laws of physics as we understand them. And now, through a chance discovery in Gran's attic, I'm involved, too. I return the box to its hidden compartment in the trunk and slide the panel back into place. My phone buzzes with a text message. It's from my mother. Coming over. Don't do anything until I get there. I glance at the time. 5:17 a.m. My mother, who normally doesn't leave the house before 9 o'clock, is coming to my apartment at dawn. Whatever this is, it's serious. I put on a pot of coffee and wait, my mind racing with questions. How much does my mother know? Was my father aware of his own fraudulent heritage? Does this secret extend to my entire family? At 5:45, there's a knock at my door. When I open it, I'm surprised to find not just my mother, but my sister Sarah as well. I haven't seen Sarah since Christmas, and even then, our interaction was strained. She looks tired, with dark circles under her eyes and her blonde hair pulled back in a hasty ponytail. You shouldn't have brought it here, my mother says without preamble, brushing past me into the apartment. Her eyes lock onto the trunk in my living room. Sarah follows, giving me a quick, awkward hug. Hey, little brother. Mom called me in a panic, said it was a family emergency. Care to explain why I had to drive 3 hours before sunrise? I'm still figuring that out myself, I reply, closing the door. But apparently, our grandfather wasn't who we thought he was. My mother has knelt beside the trunk, her fingers tracing the brass fittings with a familiarity that surprises me. You opened it, she says. It's not a question. Yes. And I read the letters and journals inside. I hesitate, then add. I found the device, too. Sarah looks between us, confusion evident on her face. What device? What are you two talking about? My mother stands, suddenly looking every one of her 70 years. Sit down, both of you. There are things you need to know. Things your father and I agreed never to tell you. We settle in the living room, me and Sarah on the couch, our mother in the armchair opposite. Between us sits the trunk, an unwelcome guest at this family reunion. Your grandfather, my father-in-law, came to Blackwood in late 1945, my mother begins. He claimed to be Edward Montgomery, who had left town as a young man and was now returning after the war. The Real Edward Montgomery had indeed left Blackwood years earlier and had no living relatives in town, so no one questioned his identity. He wasn't a historian or a spy, Sarah says, skepticism heavy in her voice. He sold insurance and coached Little League. That was his cover, I explain. According to his journals, he was originally an academic, an expert in medieval symbology, who was recruited into a secret organization called the Order of the Eternal Watch before the war. They sent him to Europe to find and secure artifacts of power, including something called the Schwartz device. My mother nods. That's consistent with what James, your father, discovered after Edward's death. There was a letter addressed to your father explaining everything. It was to be opened only in the event of Edward's death. And Dad never told us? Sarah sounds hurt. He wanted to protect you, our mother says softly. Both of you. The letter explained that the device had been bound to our bloodline through some kind of ritual. As long as it remained contained and inactive, our family would prosper. But if it were ever used again, what? I prompt when she trails off. What happens if it's used again? My mother meets my eyes. The letter wasn't specific. It just said that the consequences would be catastrophic. Not just for our family, but potentially for reality itself. Sarah laughs, the sound brittle in the tense atmosphere. Reality itself. Mom, do you hear yourself? This is insane. Grandpa was probably senile when he wrote that letter. Or it's some kind of elaborate joke. It's not a joke, I say firmly. I've read his journals from during the war. The details are too consistent, too specific to be fabricated, and I've seen the device. It's not normal. It doesn't behave according to the laws of physics as we understand them. You opened the box. My mother's voice rises in alarm. Did you touch the device? No, I just looked at it. It's unlike anything I've ever seen. Not quite solid, not quite liquid, with symbols etched into its surface. Close the box and lock it, my mother commands. Now. I move to the trunk, slide open the hidden panel, and double-check that the containment box is securely closed. The clasp seems to resist slightly before clicking into place. What I don't understand, I say as I secure the hidden compartment, is why Grandpa, or whoever he really was, abandoned his first family. He had a wife named Margaret, and 2 children, Thomas and Eliza. He just left them behind when he created his new identity. My mother and Sarah exchange a look that sends a chill down my spine. What? I demand. What aren't you telling me? Margaret Montgomery and her children didn't survive the war, my mother says quietly. Their home in London was hit during an air raid in early 1945. There were no survivors. The revelation hits me like a physical blow. He knew. That's why he didn't go back to them. According to your father, Edward received news of their deaths while still in Europe. It was part of why he decided to start a new life. He blamed himself, believed that if he had been with them instead of pursuing the device, they might have gone to a shelter sooner, might have survived. So, we're not really Montgomerys, Sarah says, processing this information. Our real family name would have been, whatever Grandpa's name was before he took that identity. The journals never mention his original name, I realize. He's always referred to as Edward or E. But there's another mystery. Someone who signs their letters only as M. Malcolm Blackwood, my mother says, surprising me. That was in the letter, too. He was another member of the order who defected around the same time as your grandfather. Apparently, they maintained sporadic contact over the years. Blackwood? Like the town? Sarah asks. The town was named after his family. They were among the original founders in the 1800s. The family estate is that big property on the hill overlooking the lake. You know, the one that's been abandoned for decades. I remember the place. A sprawling Victorian mansion surrounded by overgrown gardens, its windows boarded up, a chain-link fence warning trespassers to keep out. As children, we called it the witch house, and dared each other to climb the fence. No one ever did. So, this Malcolm Blackwood helped Grandpa escape from this order, I summarize. But why Blackwood? Why come to the town named after his friend's family? It wasn't just named after them. The Blackwoods owned half the town at one point. Malcolm apparently arranged for Edward to establish himself here where he could keep an eye on him, and the device, from a distance. Sarah stands abruptly, pacing the small living room. This is too much. Secret orders, magical devices, fake identities. It sounds like the plot of a bad movie. And what does any of this have to do with us now? Grandpa's been dead for 20 years. The device is bound to our bloodline, I remind her. According to the letter from Malcolm, that means our fates are linked to it somehow. Which is why, my mother says firmly, we need to ensure it remains secure and inactive. Your father maintained the containment box and performed the necessary rituals on the solstices, as Edward taught him. After your father passed, I took over that responsibility. Rituals? Sarah repeats incredulously. You've been performing occult rituals, Mom. Our mother looks uncomfortable. They're more like maintenance procedures. Certain symbols need to be redrawn, certain words recited. I don't pretend to understand how it works, but your father was adamant that it needed to be done. And you never thought to tell us about any of this? I can't keep the accusation from my voice. We were protecting you, she insists. Your father and I agreed that you would only be told if absolutely necessary, if something happened to both of us, or if the device was somehow discovered, which it now has been. The implications of this sink in. So, what happens now? Do we just keep the device hidden? Keep performing these maintenance procedures for the rest of our lives, then pass the responsibility on to our children? That was the plan. My mother acknowledges, but there's more you need to know. The order still exists. Sarah stops pacing. What? They've evolved over the decades, splintered into various factions, as Malcolm predicted. Some call themselves the Eternal Watch, others the Guardians of the Veil. But they all share one goal, collecting and controlling artifacts of power. And they've never stopped looking for the Schwartz device. How do you know this? I ask. Your father was approached by them once in the 1980s. A man claiming to be a representative of the Eternal Watch came to his office asking questions about Edward, about his time during the war. Your father pretended ignorance, but it frightened him. We moved to the other side of town, changed our phone number. For years, he was convinced we were being watched. And were you? Sarah asks. I don't know. Nothing ever happened. But your father became more vigilant about the containment procedures after that incident. And he made me promise that if they ever came again, I would take the device and run, just as Edward had done. I look at the trunk, feeling a weight of responsibility descend on me. Do they know about us? About me and Sarah? I don't think so. Your father was careful to keep you both separated from this part of our lives. That's why we never told you the truth about Edward. The less you knew, the safer you were. But now I know, I point out. I've read the journals, seen the device. I've connected myself to this whether you wanted me to or not. My mother sighs. Yes, and that's why I need to teach you the containment procedures. One of you will need to take over that responsibility. Sarah laughs again, but there's an edge of hysteria to it now. Not me. No way. I have a life in Chicago, a career. I'm not moving back to Blackwood to perform occult rituals on some supposedly supernatural device that our fake grandfather stole during the war. It doesn't have to be in Blackwood, our mother says. The device can be moved as long as the containment box remains intact and the procedures are followed. But it has to be someone of the bloodline. We're not even of his bloodline, Sarah argues. Not his real one if his real children died in London. The ritual binds to the bloodline going forward, not backward, our mother explains. Once Edward performed it, it applied to his new family, to your father, to you too, to any children you might have. Sarah looks at me. Then it's your responsibility. You're the one who found it, who brought it here. I want nothing to do with this. I want to argue, but I can see the fear in my sister's eyes. She's always been more practical than me, less inclined toward the mysterious or unexplained. And she's right. I'm the one who opened this Pandora's box. Fine, I say, resigned. I'll do it, but I want to understand exactly what I'm dealing with. Mom, you need to tell me everything you know about the device, about the order, about these containment procedures. My mother nods. I will, but not here. We should move the device somewhere safer first. My house, perhaps. No, I decide. If these people are still looking for it, they might know about your connection to Edward. My place is safer. No one associates me with him except through Dad. And that's a connection twice removed. Daniel's right, Sarah says, surprising me with her support. And his apartment building has better security than your house, Mom. Our mother hesitates, then concedes. All right, but we need to be careful. The device has been dormant for decades, but that doesn't mean it's harmless. The more it's moved, the more attention it can attract. Attention from who? I ask. Or what? I don't know exactly. Your father never fully explained it to me. He just said that the device exists partially in our reality and partially elsewhere. And that moving it creates a kind of ripple that those sensitive to such things can detect. Like the quantum signature mentioned in Malcolm's letter, I murmur. Yes, I suppose so. The containment box shields that signature, but it's not perfect, especially when the device is moved. Sarah checks her watch. It's almost 7. I need coffee and food if we're going to keep discussing our family's secret occult legacy. The normality of the request breaks some of the tension. I move to the kitchen to make breakfast while my mother and Sarah continue talking in low voices in the living room. As I crack eggs into a bowl, I try to process everything I've learned in the past 12 hours. My grandfather was not who I thought he was. My family has been guarding a potentially dangerous artifact for generations. And somewhere out there, a secret society is still looking for it. It's too much to take in all at once, so I focus on the immediate task, making breakfast. But as I reach for a frying pan, a wave of dizziness washes over me. The kitchen seems to ripple around me like heat haze on asphalt in summer. For just a moment, I see something else overlaid on my familiar surroundings. A vast, dark space filled with shapes that make no geometric sense, with colors that hurt to look at. And in that space, something notices me. The sensation passes as quickly as it came, leaving me gasping and gripping the edge of the counter for support. In the living room, Sarah gives a small cry of surprise and I hear my mother murmuring soothingly to her. They felt it, too. I abandon the breakfast preparations and return to the living room. Sarah is pale, her hands trembling slightly. My mother looks grim but unsurprised. What was that? Sarah demands. The device, our mother says quietly. It's becoming active. I didn't touch it, I protest. The box is closed, secure in the trunk. It doesn't need to be touched. It responds to knowledge, to attention. For decades, it's been forgotten, ignored. Now, 3 members of the bloodline are actively focused on it, discussing it. That alone is enough to begin waking it. Waking it? Sarah repeats. It's not alive. Not alive as we understand life, our mother clarifies. But it is aware in its way. That's what makes it so dangerous. It doesn't just do things, it wants things. What does it want? I ask, dreading the answer. To be used. To fulfill its purpose. She hesitates. To open the door. What door? Where does it lead? I don't know. Edward's letter wasn't specific, and your father didn't share everything with me. He just impressed upon me the absolute importance of keeping the device contained and dormant. Sarah stands, grabbing her purse. I can't do this. I'm sorry, but this is beyond crazy. I'm going back to Chicago. Whatever family curse or legacy this is, I want no part of it. Sarah, wait, I begin, but she cuts me off. No, Daniel. I've spent 15 years building a life away from this town, away from the memories of Dad's death and everything else. I can't get pulled back in now. Not for this insanity. It's not insanity, our mother says sharply. What you just felt, what we all felt, was real. Denying it won't protect you. Maybe not, Sarah concedes. But I'm not going to let it consume my life either. You two do what you need to do with that thing. Just leave me out of it. She heads for the door, but I step in front of her. Sarah, please. I need your help with this. We're family. Her expression softens slightly. I know, and I love you both, but I can't do this, Danny. I just can't. Call me when it's over. When the device is secured or destroyed or whatever needs to happen, but don't ask me to be part of it. I step aside, recognizing the determination in her eyes. It's the same look she had when she announced she was leaving Blackwood after high school, when she said she needed a fresh start away from the memories of the accident that took our father. After Sarah leaves, my mother and I sit in silence for a long moment. She'll be okay, my mother finally says. Sarah has always been strong-willed. And maybe it's better this way. The fewer people involved, the safer everyone is. Safer from what, exactly? I press. You keep hinting at dangers, but I need to know specifically what we're dealing with. My mother sighs, suddenly looking very tired. The truth is, I don't know all the details. Your father protected me from the full knowledge, just as he tried to protect you and Sarah. But I do know this. The Schwartz device was not created by humans. According to Edward's letter, it predates human civilization, possibly even Earth itself. So, it's what? Alien technology. That's one theory. Another is that it comes from another dimension, another reality that occasionally intersects with our own. The Order collected such objects, studied them, sometimes used them despite the risks. And what does this particular device do? You mentioned opening a door. Yes, it's supposedly a key of sorts, capable of creating a passage between our reality and somewhere else. Edward never specified where, only that those who sought the device during the war had different ideas about what lay on the other side. Some believed it was heaven, others hell. Some thought it led to a realm of pure knowledge, others to a place of unimaginable power. But Grandpa Edward used it once, right? In the safe house in Geneva. He wrote about it in his journal, said the men who trapped him there folded in on themselves when he activated the device. My mother nods. Yes. And that brief activation had consequences. The ritual to bind the device to our bloodline was partly a precaution against those consequences. A way to contain the damage to just our family line rather than allowing it to spread. What kind of damage? I ask, my mouth suddenly dry. She meets my eyes. Reality becomes thin around those who've been exposed to the device. Strange things happen. Coincidences that aren't coincidences. Dreams that bleed into waking life. And sometimes, visitors. Visitors? From the other side of this door? I think so. Yes. Your father had experiences he wouldn't fully describe to me. Encounters with beings that shouldn't exist in our world. That's why the containment procedures are so important. They don't just keep the device dormant. They keep those thin spots in reality from tearing open completely. The gravity of the situation settles over me like a physical weight. And now it's my responsibility. It doesn't have to be, my mother says gently. We could find another solution. Perhaps contact Malcolm Blackwood if he's still alive. He might know more about how to properly dispose of the device. You think he's still in Blackwood? At that old mansion? I don't know. No one has seen any of the Blackwood family in decades. The property is maintained by a trust, but the house itself has been empty since the 1970s, as far as anyone knows. A plan begins to form in my mind. We should go there. If Malcolm was Edward's ally, if he helped him escape with the device, he might have left information behind, something that could help us understand what we're dealing with more completely. Breaking into the Blackwood estate. My mother sounds skeptical. That's trespassing, Daniel. Do you have a better idea? Because right now, we have an artifact that's waking up, a secret society that might still be looking for it, and only the vaguest notion of how to keep it contained. We need more information. She considers this, then nods reluctantly. All right, but first, I need to show you the containment procedures. If the device is becoming active, we can't wait. My mother opens her purse and removes a small leather-bound book, similar to Edward's journals, but newer. Your father kept detailed notes on everything Edward taught him. I've continued the practice. She opens the book to a marked page, revealing diagrams of symbols that match those on the containment box, along with handwritten instructions. These symbols need to be refreshed every solstice and equinox, she explains. The ink is a mixture of specific elements. Iron filings, silver dust, salt, and a drop of blood from a member of the bloodline. Blood magic. I can't keep the skepticism from my voice. Call it what you will, it works. I've maintained these procedures for 15 years since your father's death, and the device has remained dormant until now. She continues explaining the ritual. Certain words that must be spoken in Latin, a specific arrangement of candles, timing that must coincide exactly with the astronomical event. The next equinox is in September, she says. But given what happened earlier, that ripple we all felt, I think we should perform an emergency containment ritual now. It won't be as effective as one done on a solstice or equinox, but it should help stabilize the device temporarily. I agree, and my mother guides me through the preparations. We clear space in my living room, arranging candles in a pattern around the trunk. She uses a silver pen to carefully redraw faded symbols on the containment box, then shows me how to mix the special ink. A drop of blood, she instructs, holding out a small pin. Just a pin prick on your finger is enough. I hesitate only briefly before pricking my finger and allowing a drop of blood to fall into the mixture. My mother stirs it with a small silver rod, then uses a fine brush to trace certain symbols on a piece of parchment that she places beneath the containment box. Now repeat after me, she says, and begins reciting words in Latin. I follow as best I can, stumbling over the unfamiliar pronunciation. As we complete the ritual, the candles flicker simultaneously, though there's no breeze in my apartment. A sensation of pressure builds in the room, as though the air itself is being compressed, and then releases with an almost audible pop. The rippling effect I experienced earlier does not return. The device, it seems, has been temporarily pacified. It worked, my mother says, sounding relieved. But this is just a stopgap measure. We need a more permanent solution. The Blackwood estate, I remind her. We should go there today. See what we can find. She nods, helping me clean up the ritual materials. We'll need to bring the device with us. I don't think it's safe to leave it unattended now that it's been awakened, even partially. Is it safe to move it? With the containment box and the ritual we just performed, yes, it should be stable enough for transport, but we need to be careful. No detours, no stops along the way, straight from here to the Blackwood property. I secure the containment box in the trunk, making sure the hidden compartment is properly closed. Despite the ritual, I can't shake the feeling that the device is somehow aware of me now, that it's watching me through the layers of metal and wood that separate us. My mother and I leave my apartment, carrying the trunk between us. It's now mid-morning, and my neighbors are going about their Saturday routines. Walking dogs, carrying groceries, washing cars. The normality of the scene is jarring against the strangeness of our situation. We load the trunk into the back of my mother's SUV, securing it with bungee cords to prevent it from sliding around. As I close the tailgate, I notice a car parked across the street, a black sedan with tinted windows. I can't see if anyone is inside, but something about it raises the hairs on the back of my neck. Mom, I say quietly. That black car across the street. Has it been there long? She glances over casually, then tenses. I don't know, but let's not take any chances. Get in. We drive away, and I keep an eye on the rearview mirror. The black sedan doesn't move, which should be reassuring, but somehow isn't. I can't shake the feeling that we're being watched. The Blackwood estate is on the outskirts of town, about a 20-minute drive from my apartment. As we approach, the landscape becomes more rural, with open fields giving way to dense woods. The property itself is surrounded by a high stone wall, interrupted only by a pair of wrought iron gates that have been chained shut for as long as I can remember. How do we get in? I ask. My mother parks on the shoulder of the road, out of sight of the main gate. There's a service entrance on the east side of the property. She says. Your father showed it to me once, years ago. It's less conspicuous than trying to climb the main gate. We leave the car locked, the trunk secure in the back, and follow the stone wall around the perimeter of the property. After about 10 minutes of walking, we come to a smaller gate, partially hidden by overgrown vegetation. The lock is old and rusted, but still functional. Now what? I ask. My mother reaches into her purse and produces a key. Your father kept this. I never asked where he got it. The key fits the lock, though it takes some effort to turn. The gate swings open with a protesting creak, revealing a narrow path overgrown with weeds. "Dad came here?" I ask as we make our way along the path. "Why?" After that man from the order approached him in the 80s, he became obsessed with finding a way to permanently neutralize the device. He thought Malcolm Blackwood might have left information behind when he abandoned the estate. And did he find anything? Not that he ever told me, but he only came a few times before he died. The path leads us through dense woods until the trees suddenly give way to formal gardens, or what used to be formal gardens. Now it's a wilderness of overgrown hedges, crumbling statuary, and flower beds reclaimed by native plants. Beyond the garden stands Blackwood Manor, a sprawling Victorian mansion that must have been magnificent in its day. Now it's a decaying shell with peeling paint, boarded windows, and a sagging roof. Yet, despite its dilapidated state, it retains a certain grandeur, a suggestion of the power and wealth that built it. "It's bigger than I remember," I murmur as we approach. The Blackwoods were one of the wealthiest families in the state before they disappeared, my mother explains. This house was just one of their properties. They had others in Europe and South America. The front door is secured with a heavy padlock, but again, my mother has a key. Inside, the house is surprisingly intact, if dusty and neglected. Sheets cover the furniture, and cobwebs drape from the chandeliers, but there's no sign of vandalism or animal intrusion. Someone maintains this place, I observe. Even abandoned houses don't stay this preserved without some care. The trust, my mother reminds me. They probably send people to check on it periodically, make sure it's secure. We move through the ground floor rooms, a grand foyer, a formal dining room, a library with empty shelves, a music room with a sheet-covered piano. Everything speaks of wealth and cultivation. Of a family that valued art and learning. Where would Malcolm keep information about the order or the device? I wonder aloud. If he was anything like Edward, he'd have a hidden space, my mother suggests. A place where sensitive materials could be stored safely. We search for such a space, looking for hidden panels, false walls, secret compartments in the furniture. The house is vast, and our progress is slow. By mid-afternoon, we've covered only the ground floor and part of the second with no success. We should get the trunk from the car, my mother says as we take a break in what was once a study. I don't like having it out of our sight for so long. I agree, and we make our way back to the service entrance and then to the car. Everything appears undisturbed, but as I reach for the tailgate, that sense of being watched returns, stronger than before. I scan the road in both directions. There's no sign of the black sedan I noticed earlier. No indication that anyone else is around. Yet the feeling persists. We retrieve the trunk and carry it back to the house, placing it in the study where we were resting. As we set it down, a floorboard creaks loudly, then gives way beneath the weight, causing the trunk to tilt precariously. I grab it before it can fall, but the damage is done. The floorboard has splintered, revealing a space beneath. My mother and I exchange a look, then carefully move the trunk aside and examine the broken board. It's not a structural failure, but a deliberate hiding place. The board has been cut and fitted with tiny hinges, designed to open when pressure is applied in just the right spot. And in the space beneath is a metal box, similar in size to a safety deposit box. I retrieve it carefully. Like the containment box for the device, it's made of multiple metals layered together, though the design is simpler. There's a combination lock on the front, a series of 4 dials with letters instead of numbers. Any idea what the combination might be? I ask my mother. She shakes her head. But if this was Malcolm Blackwood's, and he was trying to leave information for Edward or his descendants to find, it might be something connected to the order or to Grandpa. I finish her thought. I try various combinations. EOW for Eternal Order of the Watch. SDVC for Schwartz device. EMTTG for Edward Montgomery. Nothing works. Wait, I say, remembering something from the letters. Malcolm signed his letters to Grandpa as just M, and addressed him as E. Maybe. I set the dials to EMSD, E and M for their initials, SD for the device. There's a soft click, and the box opens. Inside are several items. A thin leather-bound journal, a sealed envelope addressed to the Montgomery-era, a small cloth bag, and what appears to be an ancient coin or medallion. I open the envelope first. Inside is a letter dated June 12, 1972. To the Montgomery-era. If you are reading this, then two things must be true. Edward is gone, and the device has begun to stir once more. I have arranged for this box to remain hidden until such a time as both these conditions are met. You are now the guardian of a burden you did not choose. For this, I apologize. Edward and I made decisions in desperate times that have consequences reaching far beyond our own lives. The Schwartz device is not what the Order believed it to be. They thought it a tool, a key to unlock knowledge or power. In truth, it is a fragment of something larger, something that should never have entered our reality. The entities that pursued us during the war were not merely Nazi occultists or rival factions of the Order. They were vessels, humans whose minds had been compromised by contact with the world beyond the door. They sought the device not for themselves, but for their masters, beings that exist in the spaces between realities. These entities cannot fully manifest in our world without a gateway. And that is what the device provides. When Edward activated it in Geneva, he created a temporary opening, just enough for their influence to seep through. That influence attached itself to him, to his bloodline, like a parasite seeking a host. The binding ritual we performed was not merely to prevent others from using the device. It was to contain that influence, to prevent it from spreading beyond your family. It was the lesser of two evils, sacrificing one bloodline to protect countless others. But there is another way. In the years since Edward disappeared, I have searched for a method to neutralize the device permanently. My research has taken me to places I never thought to go, to sources of knowledge the Order either did not know about or deliberately avoided. The journal enclosed contains my findings. The medallion is a key to a vault beneath this house where I have gathered artifacts and texts that may aid you. The contents of the cloth bag are seeds of a rare plant that grows only in the presence of entities from beyond. Plant them around your home. They will provide some protection against the influence of the device and warn you if any of the entities attempt to approach. One final warning, the Order is not what it once was. After the war, it splintered into multiple factions, each with their own agenda. Some still seek the device, while others believe it should be destroyed. Trust none of them. They will present themselves as allies, as experts who can help you. But their goals are not aligned with the safety of your family or our world. The Montgomery and Blackwood lines are now bound together in this duty. Though I have no direct heirs, I have arranged for resources to be available to you through the Blackwood Trust. The current trustee is aware of some, though not all, of these matters and can be contacted in an emergency. Proceed with caution, and remember that knowledge is both protection and danger when it comes to the device. The more you learn about it, the more active it becomes. Yet without understanding, you cannot hope to neutralize it. With deepest regret and highest hope, Malcolm Blackwood. I pass the letter to my mother, who reads it with growing concern. Meanwhile, I examine the medallion. It's heavy, made of what looks like gold, but with a strange iridescence that shifts as it catches the light. On one side is a symbol similar to those on the containment box, concentric circles surrounding what might be a stylized doorway. On the other side is a more familiar symbol, a compass rose with an eye at its center, which I recognize from Edward's journals as the emblem of the Order of the Eternal Watch. The cloth bag contains what look like ordinary seeds, small, dark, slightly shiny. There are perhaps 24 of them. I turn to the journal, opening it carefully. The pages are filled with dense writing, diagrams, and symbols, many of which I don't recognize, but the first entry is clear enough. July 17, 1962. I have confirmed my suspicions about the true nature of the Schwartz device. It is not, as the Order believed, a tool created by an advanced civilization or a magic artifact from some bygone age. It is organic, a fragment of a living entity from beyond our reality. The symbols etched into its surface are not controls or instructions, but a form of cellular structure similar to DNA, but encoding information beyond the merely biological. It is, in essence, a seed, one that if fully activated would grow into a permanent doorway between our world and theirs. Edward's partial activation in Geneva was akin to a germination, but the growth was halted before it could fully develop. Still, that brief contact was enough for the entities to establish a foothold, to create a connection to Edward and, through him, to his bloodline. The binding ritual we performed has contained that connection, prevented it from spreading further. But it is not a permanent solution. The influence remains, dormant but not destroyed, waiting for an opportunity to grow again. I look up from the journal, my mind reeling with the implications. The device is alive. Or part of something alive. My mother finishes reading the letter and meets my gaze. It would explain why it responds to attention, to knowledge. Living things are aware in ways that objects aren't. And these entities from beyond. They're still connected to our family because of what Grandpa did in Geneva. The binding ritual didn't break that connection. It just contained it. Yes, but Malcolm found another way, she points out. He mentions a vault beneath this house. Artifacts and texts that might help us neutralize the device permanently. I hold up the medallion. And this is the key. We spend the next hour searching for the entrance to this vault, examining the floors, walls, and furniture for any sign of a keyhole or mechanism that might accept the medallion. Finally, in the cellar, we discover a section of the stone wall that's slightly different from the rest. The mortar patterns don't quite match. In the center of this section is a small depression that corresponds to the size and shape of the medallion. I place it in the depression, aligning the doorway symbol with a barely visible mark on the stone. For a moment, nothing happens. Then the medallion begins to glow with a soft golden light, and the section of wall slides silently aside, revealing a narrow staircase leading down into darkness. Did Dad know about this? I ask, amazed. If he did, he never told me, my mother replies, equally astonished. We retrieve flashlights from our supplies and descend the stairs carefully. They lead to a large underground chamber that looks like a cross between a library, a laboratory, and a museum. Shelves line the walls, filled with books, scrolls, and strange artifacts. Tables hold scientific equipment alongside what appear to be ritual implements. Glass cases display objects of various shapes and sizes, each labeled in a neat, precise hand. But most striking is the center of the room, where a large circle has been inlaid into the floor using different types of metal and stone. The pattern is complex, with multiple layers of symbols and geometric shapes that remind me of the containment box for the Schwartz device, but on a much larger scale. This must be what Malcolm was working on, I say, approaching the circle carefully. A way to neutralize the device permanently. Look at all this, my mother marvels, examining the shelves. He must have spent decades collecting these materials, conducting research. I join her, scanning the book titles. Many are in languages I don't recognize, but some are in English, with titles like Quantum Entanglement and Extradimensional Physics, Ritual Containment of Non-Euclidean Entities, and the Blackwood Codex, a study of interdimensional gateways. The Blackwood Codex, I repeat, pulling out the last book. It was written by Malcolm himself. The book is massive, at least 1,000 pages, with detailed illustrations and diagrams throughout. A quick flip through reveals it to be a comprehensive study of interdimensional travel, entities from other realities, and methods for containing or repelling them. This could take weeks to go through properly, I say, overwhelmed by the sheer volume of information. We may not have weeks, my mother points out. If the device is waking up, if these entities are becoming aware of us again, she doesn't need to finish the thought. We both remember the rippling reality we experienced in my apartment. The sensation of being watched that has followed us here. We should focus on finding specific information about neutralizing the Schwartz device, I decide. Malcolm said he found another way. Something beyond the binding ritual. We search through the materials, looking for references to the device or to neutralization methods. After an hour, I find a folder labeled Schwartz Neutralization Protocol tucked between two larger volumes. Inside are detailed instructions for a ritual, or perhaps procedure is a better word, as it combines elements of scientific methodology with more esoteric practices. The goal, according to the notes, is to sever the connection between the device and the entities beyond, effectively rendering it inert. This is it, I tell my mother, spreading the papers on one of the tables. Malcolm's solution. The procedure requires specific conditions. A new moon, the alignment of certain stars, and most importantly, the presence of all living members of the bloodline to which the device is bound. All living members, my mother repeats. That means Sarah needs to be here, too. She won't come, I remind her. She made that very clear this morning. She has to, my mother insists. According to this, the ritual won't work without her. The connection has to be severed from all branches of the bloodline simultaneously. I read further into the procedure. It's not just her presence that's required. Each of us has to actively participate, recite certain words, handle specific artifacts, position ourselves at key points within the circle. And the next new moon is, my mother checks her phone's calendar app, 5 days from now. That doesn't give us much time to convince Sarah, to prepare everything. We have to try. It may be our only chance to end this, to free our family from this burden. I continue reading the protocol, my concern growing with each page. Mom, this isn't without risk. Malcolm notes that attempting to sever the connection could alert the entities, could cause them to try to stop us, or to force their way through before the door closes permanently. What kind of risk are we talking about? Physical danger? Potentially. The entities might attempt to possess one of us, to use us as a vessel to physically interact with the device, or they might try to manipulate reality around us, create distractions or obstacles. My mother is quiet for a moment, then says firmly, it's a risk we have to take. We can't continue like this, constantly performing containment rituals, always afraid that the device might wake up fully. And we can't pass this burden on to future generations. I nod, agreeing with her logic, if not entirely comfortable with the danger. Then we need to get Sarah here, and we need to prepare this space for the ritual. According to Malcolm's notes, the circle in the center of the room is already properly constructed for the neutralization protocol. We just need to gather the specified ritual tools, prepare the incantations, and most crucially, convince my sister to participate. I'll call her, my mother says, taking out her phone. But there's no signal down here. We'll have to go back upstairs. We gather what materials we can, Malcolm's journal, the neutralization protocol documents, and a few smaller artifacts mentioned in the procedure, and head back up the stairs. As we emerge into the cellar, a sense of wrongness hits me immediately. The quality of light has changed. It's evening now, but the illumination coming from the upper floors doesn't look like artificial lighting or even the fading daylight we should be seeing. It's a sickly greenish blue, pulsing slightly as though alive. Something's not right, I whisper to my mother, who nods tensely. We ascend to the ground floor cautiously. The strange light is stronger here, seeping in through the boarded windows and casting long, distorted shadows across the floors and walls. And there's a sound, a low, rhythmic pulsing that reminds me of a heartbeat, but slower and somehow wet. The trunk, my mother says suddenly. We left it in the study. We hurry to the room where we left the Schwartz device, my flashlight beam bouncing wildly off the walls and furniture. As we enter the study, we see the source of the strange light. The trunk has been opened. The hidden compartment is exposed, and the containment box sits on the floor beside it. The box is open as well, and the device itself, the not quite solid, not quite liquid object that resembles a pocket watch, is hovering about 3 feet above the floor, spinning slowly. It's the source of the pulsing light, which emanates from the symbols etched into its surface. They glow with that same greenish-blue radiance, brightening and dimming in time with the wet, throbbing sound that fills the room. But most terrifying is the area directly beneath the floating device. The floor there seems to be melting, for lack of a better term. The hardwood is rippling and flowing like water, forming a slowly widening circle that now measures about 2 feet across. And in that circle, I can see something else. Not the basement below, but a vast, dark space filled with shapes that make no geometric sense. It's the same vision I had briefly in my apartment kitchen, but sustained now, growing stronger. The device is activating, my mother says, her voice tight with fear. It's creating a doorway. How? We didn't touch it. Didn't use it. Someone else did. The voice comes from behind us, and we spin to see a figure standing in the doorway of the study. It's a man in his 60s, dressed in an impeccable gray suit that seems oddly formal for the setting. His hair is silver, his face lined but distinguished, and his eyes are wrong. They reflect the pulsing light of the device with an internal luminescence that no human eyes should possess. Who are you? I demand, though I already suspect the answer. The man smiles, and the expression doesn't quite fit his face, as though someone is wearing his features like an ill-fitting mask. A friend of the family, you might say. I've been waiting a long time for this moment. You're from the Order, my mother guesses. Originally, yes. The Order of the Eternal Watch, though my allegiances have evolved over the decades. He steps into the room, his movements too smooth, too precise. You've done well, bringing the device here. This location has significance, power that will help the opening proceed more efficiently. We didn't bring it for you, I say, moving slightly to place myself between this stranger and my mother. And we have no intention of letting that doorway open. The man laughs, a sound like glass breaking. Your intentions are irrelevant. The process has begun. The Schwartz device has been activated, and nothing can stop it now. Soon my masters will be able to cross over fully into this reality. Your masters, my mother's voice is steady despite the fear I know she must be feeling. The entities from beyond. Yes. They have waited centuries for this opportunity. Manipulating events, guiding certain bloodlines toward this moment. The war, the Order, Edward's mission to find the device. All of it orchestrated to bring us to this point. As he speaks, I notice the rippling circle on the floor has grown larger, now nearly 3 feet in diameter, and something is beginning to emerge from it. A dark, shifting mass that seems to fold and unfold itself in ways that hurt to look at directly. We need to stop this, I mutter to my mother. The containment box, if we can get the device back inside, a futile effort, the stranger says, his hearing apparently much sharper than should be possible. The device cannot be contained now that it has begun the opening. And even if you could somehow interrupt the process, my masters would simply find another way, another tool. They've been trying for centuries, according to you. I point out. They haven't succeeded yet. Because they lacked the proper alignment, the device, the location, and most importantly, the bloodline. All three are necessary for a stable doorway. Edward Montgomery's actions in Geneva created the connection to your family, making you the perfect conduits for my master's entry into this world. As the stranger talks, I'm frantically trying to think of a solution. Malcolm's neutralization protocol requires the new moon, all three of us present, and proper preparation. We have none of those things right now, but there must be something we can do to at least delay this process. My eyes fall on Malcolm's journal, which I'm still holding. On an impulse, I flip it open, searching for any information about interrupting an activation of the device. And there it is. A brief note in the margin of a page. Emergency containment. Blood of the bound, freely given. Can temporarily halt an active gateway. Blood of the bound, freely given. Our blood, mine, my mother's, Sarah's. But Sarah isn't here. Mom, I whisper, showing her the note. "We need blood from all three of us, but Sarah, we're twins," my mother reminds me, her eyes widening with realization. Identical twins. My blood and Sarah's. They're the same. It might work. The stranger has noticed our exchange. Whatever you're planning, it won't succeed. The gateway is already forming. In moments, the first of my masters will cross over. The dark mass emerging from the rippling circle has taken on a more defined shape. Something vaguely humanoid but wrong in its proportions, with too many angles and not enough curves. It moves with a jerking, stuttering motion, as though having difficulty adjusting to our reality's physical laws. We need to act now. Distract him, I murmur to my mother, who nods almost imperceptibly. She steps forward, addressing the stranger. Who are you, really? Not just a member of the order. You know too much about these entities, about the device. As she engages him in conversation, drawing his attention, I carefully set down Malcolm's journal and reach into my pocket for my Swiss Army knife. I open the small blade and, steeling myself, draw it across my palm. The cut is shallow, but bleeds freely, enough for our purpose. I gesture for my mother to do the same. She continues talking to the stranger, keeping his focus on her as she casually brings her hand to her own pocket. My name is irrelevant, the stranger is saying. I am merely a vessel, a servant of those who will soon remake this world in their image. Your reality is flawed, limited by 3 dimensions and linear time. My masters exist beyond such constraints. They will bring perfection, unity, a higher form of existence. By force, my mother challenges. That doesn't sound like perfection to me. That sounds like invasion, like conquest. Change is always resisted by those who cannot comprehend its necessity, the stranger replies, his unnatural eyes gleaming. But once the transformation begins, you will understand. You will be elevated. Your consciousness expanded beyond anything you can currently imagine. While they talk, my mother has managed to cut her own palm. She catches my eye, and I nod slightly. We need to get to the device, to apply our blood directly to it if Malcolm's note is to be believed. But the stranger stands between us and the floating device, and the partially manifested entity continues to emerge from the gateway beneath it. We need a distraction. I search the room desperately for something to use. My eyes fall on the medallion we used to open the vault. I still have it in my pocket. Malcolm's journal mentioned it was created by the Order, designed to detect and disrupt extradimensional energies. Hey, I shout suddenly, pulling the medallion from my pocket and holding it up. Recognize this? The stranger turns to me, his expression flickering between anger and fear as he sees the medallion. Where did you get that? Malcolm Blackwood left it for us. For this exact situation. I don't know if that's true, but the bluff seems to work. The stranger takes a step toward me, away from the device. Give it to me, he demands, his voice distorting slightly, taking on a resonance that vibrates in my bones. That artifact is dangerous in untrained hands. I don't think so, I reply, backing up slowly, drawing him further from the device. I think it's dangerous to you and your masters. I think it can shut down that gateway you're so eager to open. The stranger lunges at me with inhuman speed, but I'm ready for it. I dodge to the side, and as he passes me, I toss the medallion to my mother. She catches it with her uninjured hand and dashes toward the device while the stranger is off balance. No, he screams, whirling to pursue her. I tackle him from behind, using my weight to bring him down. He's stronger than he looks, but I manage to pin him momentarily, giving my mother the time she needs. She reaches the floating device and, without hesitation, presses her bleeding palm against its surface. The effect is immediate. The pulsing light stutters, and the wet, throbbing sound falters. It's working, she calls to me. Daniel, your blood, too. I struggle to break free from the stranger, who is now thrashing beneath me with unnatural strength. His skin feels wrong under my hands. Too cold, too smooth, like touching a reptile. You cannot stop this, he hisses, his voice no longer human at all, but a sibilant whisper that seems to come from everywhere at once. The gateway will open. My masters will come through. Your reality will be remade. With a sudden surge of strength, he throws me off, sending me crashing into a bookshelf. Pain explodes in my shoulder and back, but I force myself to my feet, my bleeding hand outstretched toward the device. The stranger moves to intercept me, but my mother has seen what's happening. She throws the medallion at him, striking him squarely in the chest. He screams, a sound no human throat could produce, and falls to his knees, clawing at the medallion as though it burns him. I seize the opportunity and lunge for the device, pressing my bleeding palm against its shifting surface, just as my mother did. The sensation is indescribable, like plunging my hand into ice water and fire simultaneously, like touching something that exists in multiple states at once. The effect is dramatic. The pulsing light from the device flares blindingly bright, then begins to fade. The wet, throbbing sound rises to a crescendo, then diminishes to a low, angry buzz. The rippling circle on the floor stops expanding, and the partially manifested entity seems to struggle, its movements becoming more erratic and desperate. It's closing, my mother shouts over the noise. The gateway is closing. The stranger on the floor has managed to remove the medallion from his chest, leaving a smoking, circular burn on his suit. He rises, his movements jerky and uncoordinated, and stumbles toward us. No, he gasps, his voice fluctuating between human and other. You don't understand what you're doing. We understand perfectly, I tell him, keeping my hand firmly on the device despite the pain it causes. We're protecting our world from your masters. We're closing the door. Not closing, he says, a horrifying smile spreading across his face. Merely delaying. And at great cost to yourselves. The blood of the bound, freely given. Do you know what that really means? I look to my mother, who appears as confused as I feel. It means you've marked yourselves, the stranger continues, his smile widening impossibly, stretching his face in ways no human face should stretch. By giving your blood to the device directly, you've strengthened the connection between yourselves and what lies beyond. You've made yourselves beacons that my masters can now track. No matter where you go, a chill runs through me at his words, but I keep my hand on the device. The gateway is shrinking now, the entity being pulled back into it, dissolving at the edges like smoke in wind. You lie, my mother says, though uncertainty colors her voice. Truth is more useful than lies in this instance, the stranger replies. You've won a temporary reprieve, nothing more, and you've painted targets on yourselves in the process. My masters will find you now. Wherever you hide, they will use you to open the gateway again. The device is dimming rapidly now, its strange material becoming more solid, less liquid. The gateway beneath it has shrunk to the size of a dinner plate, the entity almost completely withdrawn. We'll be ready, I tell the stranger defiantly. We have Malcolm's research, his neutralization protocol. At the new moon, we'll end this permanently. The stranger laughs that glass-breaking laugh again. Malcolm Blackwood. Always so clever, yet so limited in his understanding. His neutralization protocol won't destroy the device or sever your connection to my masters. It will merely transfer the burden from your bloodline to another. What do you mean? I demand. Ask yourself why Malcolm never performed this ritual himself, despite decades of research. He understood the price. The Schwartz device cannot be destroyed, and its connection cannot be truly broken, only redirected. Someone must always bear the burden. The gateway has almost closed now. Just a small, swirling vortex of darkness on the floor. The stranger backs away, his movements becoming more fluid, more human, as if whatever influence was controlling him is withdrawing along with the entity. 5 days, he says, his voice nearly normal now. You have 5 days until the new moon. Use them wisely. Research, prepare, decide if you're willing to transfer your family's curse to another. He pauses at the doorway of the study. We'll meet again on the night of the ritual. I'll be interested to see what choice you make. With that, he's gone, his footsteps fading rapidly down the hall. The device has stopped glowing entirely, becoming a dull metallic object that drops unceremoniously to the floor as the last pinprick of the gateway vanishes. My mother and I stare at each other, both shaken by what we've experienced and by the stranger's parting words. Do you think he was telling the truth? I ask, cradling my cut hand. About the neutralization protocol, just transferring the burden to someone else. I don't know, she admits. But we need to find out before the new moon. We need to go through Malcolm's research more thoroughly. I nod, then move to retrieve the device from the floor. It's completely inert now, just a strange metal object with symbols etched into its surface. I place it back in the containment box and secure the latch. We should return to the vault, I suggest. There might be more information about the protocol, about what it really does. And we need to call Sarah, my mother adds. Whether the stranger was lying or not, we need her for the ritual. All three of us must participate if we have any hope of ending this. We gather our things, the containment box, Malcolm's journal, the medallion, and head back to the cellar and the hidden vault. As we descend the stairs to Malcolm's secret laboratory, I can't shake the stranger's words from my mind. The Schwartz device cannot be destroyed, and its connection cannot be truly broken, only redirected. Someone must always bear the burden. If that's true, then Malcolm's neutralization protocol isn't the solution we hoped for. It's just another form of the same problem, passing our curse to someone else. The thought makes me sick. How could we knowingly inflict this nightmare on another family? But what choice do we have? Leave things as they are, continue the endless cycle of containment rituals, always fearing that the device might wake again, that the entities might find another way through. Or perhaps there's a third option. Something in Malcolm's research that we haven't discovered yet. A true solution that doesn't just shift the burden, but actually ends it. We have 5 days to find out. 5 days until the new moon. When we'll either free our family from this generation's long nightmare or become permanent beacons for entities that want to remake our reality in their own horrifying image. As we enter the vault and close the hidden door behind us, I make a silent promise to myself. I will find a way to end this, no matter what it takes. For my mother, for Sarah, for any future generations of our family, and for Edward Montgomery, my grandfather in name, if not in blood, who made a desperate choice during a desperate time, never knowing the legacy of fear and danger he was creating for his adopted family. The burden stops with us. One way or another, it ends.